I'm Dr. Stephanie Chadwick, and today's Art Chat is realism. The term realism refers to naturalistic rather than idealized depiction. It also refers specifically to a mid-19th century art movement. In the mid-19th century, the rational, idealized classical art that had dominated Western art academies since the Italian Renaissance, and the Romantic art that emphasized imagination and emotion in the wake of the French Revolution began to lose appeal. In fact, some of the art of the Romantic era had already begun to embrace realism by depicting real-world contemporary events rather than privileging biblical and mythical subjects. Some artists of the Romantic era embraced realism so much that they showed the ugliness and brutality of life. This was especially so for the Spanish artist Goya, who in his Disasters of War series showed the atrocities of war rather than simply glorifying a particular side or cause. Another example of realism in Goya's work is his painting The 3rd of May, 1808. In stark contrast to heroic depictions of Napoleon and his conquests, Goya's painting instead shows the consequences of the emperor's bloody invasions. Goya looked to the realism of 17th century Spanish painter Diego Velázquez for inspiration, as did the 19th century realists in France. Although the tradition of realism in Western art dates back to the Roman Empire, it was artists such as Velázquez in Spain and the Dutch Baroque artists, including Jan Vermeer, who captured the attention of the 19th century French realists. The political landscape also fueled 19th century realism. The era of the revolutions in Europe and the push and pull between an emerging middle class and traditions that still supported rigid class structures made clearer pictures of reality a priority for many artists. Europe was changing as outdated forms of government made way, gradually, for more politically liberal initiatives. And this, too, appealed to the realists. Tensions between old and new, and the activities of new political and labor organizations were important focuses for realists such as Honoré Daumier, who created politically subversive drawings and cartoons in addition to paintings. Daumier's third-class carriage and other of his paintings and drawings showed the hardships caused by class-conscious society. The challenges of rural life were also explored in the work of realists such as Jean-François Millet. Although Millet seems to idealize peasant life in some of his paintings, he wrote that he wanted to depict the harsh realities that people living in the country faced at that time. He also wanted to depict his subjects with dignity. So even when he showed extreme poverty, as he does here in his painting The Gleaners, which shows impoverished rural people picking up the scraps left by harvesters, he does so in a way that the viewer empathizes with the subjects. Gustave Courbet took the realistic depiction of rural life to new extremes. In paintings such as The Stonebreakers, he deployed a rough painting style to depict the hardships of rural life and to transport the subject of rural labor into the domain of art. Paintings such as The Stonebreakers caused a major controversy among Parisian critics and viewers, many of whom still looked to the values of classical art and the kind of idealized beauty that tended to overlook or suppress the realities of everyday life. Courbet's realism was informed by his socialist politics, which were on the rise in 19th century Europe, and he showed both ordinary activities and the sometimes ugly consequences of the remnants of aristocratic governance and class structures. One of the main things Courbet did to ensure that his introduction of the ordinary and the overlooked into the domain of art would eventually be successful was to paint his subjects on huge canvases. And that was a format that had been reserved for the highest artistic genre of history painting,
which favored biblical, mythical, and other morally uplifting content. Courbet set the stage for another kind of 19th century French realism in the work of Edward Manet, who preferred the term naturalism used by his friend, the writer Émile Zola. Manet sought to show the realities of modern life affected by both long-standing European tradition and the new experiences of modernity and urbanization brought about by industrialization. A key example of this modernization, and a visual source, or at least inspiration for some of Manet's paintings, was the newly invented medium of photography. This mechanical device that captured real scenes and figures had also impacted Courbet's choice of subject and composition. In Manet's work, painting conventions in place since the Italian Renaissance seemed to merge with snapshots of modern life. The snapshot had not yet been invented, but you get the idea. And this odd combination also caused major controversy among French viewers who considered his paintings scandalous by 19th century standards. But Manet's innovative paintings that appeared to critique convention and call for artists to critically interpret modernity, what modern experience was really like, impacted artists for generations to come. And for more on Manet, you can see my art chat about Impressionism.